if I had such a thing as a small knife series, this would fit very much into that category. But it would fit into a couple of other categories, most notably Japanese made knives, and that's kind of why I have it. Um, this is a little knife by a guy called Almar. Now, Almar was a Green Beret, sort of special forces soldier in America, and after that he went to work for Gerber, Paul Gerber, the American knife maker, and by the 1970s, Gerber were having some knives made in Japan by a company called Jisakai, and Almar was very much involved with designing those knives. They made particular sorts of knives. The Silver Knight series was one, but they also made some injection molded knives with an injection molded handle in one piece and blades fitted. Now, Gerber started that, but the modern iterations of Spyderco's come from that same connection. Well, Almar was Gerber's chief knife designer, but in 1979 he left Gerber to set up his own knife making company. Having what he wanted to do was bring a custom quality, but in production made knives, so that they would have a broader appeal. And initially, most of the knives that Almar designed and had made were for military and police use. So it's quite a lot of sort of daggers and things. But he went on to make a number of other designs. And as I say, his relationship with Jisakai had started back in about 76 or 77 when he was with Gerber. So he went to them to have his knives made. And for the rest of Al's life, they were made by them. Unfortunately, there was a clause in the contract which allowed Jisakai to design and make their own knives under their own auspices and sell them as in the Almar brand, which when Al died, the guy that took over the firm was a guy called Gary Fadden, and he had a bit of a falling out with Almar's widow, but eventually, after a bit of a hassle, he took over a controlling interest in Almar knives. This would be about 1992, I think it was. Almar had an aneurysm and died quite suddenly. His coffin was carried by a number of special forces people who were friends and so forth. So anyway, when Gary Fadden took over, he moved the manufacture of knives to Moki. I like Moki knives. I've got a thing about them, and they make a lot of knives for a lot of people, as well as their own knives, and they are of particularly high quality. Now, because you never know who made these knives because they don't really tell you, but there's sufficient clues in this knife to say that it was almost certainly made by Moki. Now, 4 minutes in, and I haven't even shown you the knife. This is actually the wrong box for it. That's the code on the box. That BM stands for Black Micarta. This isn't a Black Micarta knife, so I know it's the wrong box, but it's the right sort of box. And it does also say on there, somewhere, where it says, pouch included. And it does come with a pouch. Pouch is quite nice, actually. It's a very nice quality leather. It's got the Almar stamp on it. Stitching is okay, but could be better. But it's nice, as a nice quality leather. It's tough enough and flexible enough, which is, the sort of sweet spot. You don't want the leather that's too soft, and you don't want leather that's too hard. It can be difficult to get the knife out. Now with my fingers, it's difficult to get a knife out anyway, but that's just me. Now this is a little knife, As you probably know, I like little knives. This one is pretty tiny. For example, if I compare it to this is the Ladybug by Spyderco, which is in itself a pretty small knife. And another comparator. This is the Dragonfly. This is, seriously speaking, a small knife, but it's small but beautiful. It's mother of pearl, but it's black lip mother of pearl, so it's got a whole rainbow of colors in it, going to black at the back, but you've got sort of greens and reds and pinks, as well as the white. It's a nice piece of mother of pearl. And if that wasn't enough, you have another one on the back, which is equally nice. In fact, I might almost say better. And I'm just going to zoom in a bit. I kept it not zoomed in to start with because I didn't want to make this knife look bigger than it is. But if we're going to see it, we really need it zoomed in a little bit. Now, let's have a quick look. So we've got a brushed stainless steel bolster, and then we have a little eye. You couldn't really put a lanyard in that, but you could put a ring in it if you wanted to put it on, or key ring. But I just think that would be kind of sacrilege, because this mother of pearl would be bashed to bits in no time, and that would be a crying shame. Fit and finish on the back, or so I should say, brass liners. Fit and finish on the back is lovely. Literally nothing to complain about on there. I can't, even being as picky as I am, it was difficult to find anything wrong with it, and I can be very picky. So we open it. I'm not entirely sure what we would call that blade shape. It's almost a Warncliffe, but there's a little bit of belly in it. It's probably a drop point, is probably the most accurate description. But it's, it's just it's a nice little pokey blade, because it's only, where's my ruler? It's only, what? Breaking your neck is a bad thing to do. It has lots of consequences, and the most significant one for me is that my hands are much worse. So it's got a cutting edge of 1 3/8 and a full length of 1 5/8 inches, overall length of just under 4 inches. It's probably 3 7/8. And in metric, you're talking about a cutting edge of about 35 millimeters, a overall blade length of about 42 millimeters, and an overall length of just under 10 centimeters, about 96, 97 millimeters. So it is genuinely a tiny little knife, but it is really a very beautiful knife and will fit very well in my Japanese collection. I have some Moki knives, and I have a number of knives that were either made by Moki or Jisakai, one or the other. It's difficult to know. Now, I say it's got Almar and the Almar badge on it, but if you turn it over, you will see here that it says FM Co. Japan. And now, after Gary Madden took over the business, he changed the name of the the company to Fadden Mar from Almar. So FM is Fadden Mar, which means this knife was made after 1992, but being made still in Japan, then it was made by Moki. Now, I don't know when they stopped making knives in Japan, but if you buy an Almar knife today, first of all, it's made by Fad and Ma, not the original Almar. It has very little connection to the original man, as controlling interest is outside his family. Not even his widow has a controlling interest anymore. But they're made in China. So they're still using some of the old patterns, and I'm sure they're very nice. But to my mind, Almar knives, proper Almar knives, are made in Seki City in Japan, and that's where this one comes from. I think it's a very sleek, beautiful little knife, this, and will sit very well in my collection. But I can't really see myself ever carrying it. It does have, it does have its nice little leather slip, which would mean one could carry it without too much risk of it being hurt. But in terms of size, this is, even by my standards, pretty small. In shape and design, it bears close comparison with some of my Moki knives, though of course they are of a different scale. Let me zoom back out a little bit again. Oops, out, not in. Yeah, it bears comparison in terms of style and shape with the Moki knives. Can't remember what that one's called. It's a nice knife in a burl wood scale that's actually, by Moki standards, relatively inexpensive, around about the £100 mark. I think it's just OS8 steel. This one here, the Kronos, is a bit more expensive, but again, you can see the kind of style and methods of construction and so forth. Comparison. I think one of the differences, Almar knives do tend to have this higher mid backlock rather than a sort of true backlock. But the other Moki knife that I want to compare it with, which I think it bears much more direct comparison with, is this little one. And this one actually comes in a sort of, there's similarities between the way the slips are made, both in terms of the quality and the type of leather, and with this sort of very much opening sort of jaws to it. Slightly different, and that this one is made as more or less as a pendant. Now this knife gives a clue as to how this may have been conceived to be carried, because again, this has, rather than a hole for a lanyard, it has a hole for a small split ring. Which is very much reminiscent. Sorry, with only one hand working, this is becoming increasingly difficult. Again, you have mother of pearl set into stainless steel. In this case, it's polished. I think this is the smallest knife I currently own. And it's probably the only knife I own that will make the Almar knife look large. I'd say this one is truly tiny, as I say, just for size comparison purposes. Here's the Spyderco Ladybug, which is, I think, the smallest knife in the Spyderco range. I don't know if this was the smallest knife Almar ever made, but if it was, I wouldn't be surprised. Certainly this is the smallest knife that Moki currently make in their current range. And, you know, these are truly small knives. But I think this Almar one is really quite attractive. In fact, I think it's probably more attractive than the Moki one. I do quite like the fact you've got black mother of pearl inset into white mother of pearl. I mean, it is quite nice. It's beautifully done. Yeah, you know, the pieces really do fit together very, very smoothly and beautifully. But I can see you could carry this knife like that with this little slip that just slides up the lanyard when you're using, if you're using a knife. I've never carried this knife. I've never used this knife ever, and I suspect the Altmar one will be the same. Whereas the Ladybug I do carry and use, it's probably about as small a knife as I would consider useful. Once you get down to this size, I think unless you've got tiny little hands, you're perhaps struggling with it. And certainly with my grotesque fingers, they just don't work. It's a struggle to use little baby knives like that, which is probably why I do carry this one. But I generally, the smallest knife I usually use is the Dragonfly, and that is one that I use a lot and carry a lot. Anyway, that's enough of that nonsense. What we came to see today was this little Altmar. On top of there, little Altmar, beautiful little knife in black lip mother of pearl. I don't know what the blade's made of, but I would guess it's probably either OS8 or VG10. The Moki, and I believe this is made by Moki, generally have VG10 for their higher end knives, so I suspect this may be VG10, but I can't say that with any degree of certainty. But it's almost certainly a Japanese steel, so it'll be VG10 or OS8, a US 8. Okay, thank you very much. If you like the stuff, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more of these things, then please subscribe, and remember to ring the bell if you want notifications of when they're coming out. Okay, thank you very much. Bye.